in. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diego Jose Ramos. I am the Chief Innovation Officer of Impact Hub, and always been our partner would always be KMC Solutions, the widest uh, um, s- um, flexible office provider in the country. So through this wonderful program we have called SFI or Space for Ingenious, we launched this in dedication to push the Philippine startup industry. It is just by um, honor that we have one of the few CTOs that I know that who are really CTOs. We would like to help in this us with this program. He's been into two biggest companies, tech companies in the world. One was the previous one, and currently he's the principal solution architect of Amazon Web Services. He has over two decades of being a CTO, and he has this is the kick of his resume. He has two successful startups, and he would like to talk about one failure. And let's have him, and let's ask him more. We have Mr. Jerome Poudevigne. Hi, Jerome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Diego. Thanks for having me. It's great to be there. I always love talking to startups, so I'm super happy to share a little bit of my past. As you said, yeah, I built a few startups. I was lucky enough that two of them were successful. One of them was actually totally a failure, and I learned a lot about it. But I think today what I'm going to talk about is a lot of what it takes to grow up without blowing up. And today, when you are starting a new company, you have a lot of questions, you have a lot of things you're asking yourselves. How should I go about it? How should I build the technology? Will it be enough? What will happen when I grow, when I got success, when I got a large audience? So I'm going to try to cover how this works.
Yes, would love to. Jerome, just to break the ice, how many times have you spoken to a Philippine audience?
A Filipino audience, this is the second time.
Second time. Oh,
Yeah.
well, we're lucky to have you on the top 10 first one. So we also have full-blown businesses here who are the management team of hospitality services. They wanted to know on how they can push their technology further. And without further ado, let's have Jerome.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bit of slides. Do you guys see my slides? Do you guys see my screen? Or not yet, right? Sorry. Let me share my screen.
I think
All right,
okay, there you go.
there you
All
go.
right. Just for the audience who's not just listening now, Jerome will go on like a keynote for about 20 minutes, and then followed by a reactors, and then you can toss your questions. Thank you very much. Take it away, Jerome.
Okay, great. So let me, without further ado, let me just jump to the meat of the thing. You want to build a startup, great. So you're gonna have, it's gonna be fun. And by fun, I mean like it's gonna be really hard. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit how it will unfold, from like just 0 users and 1 user to multi-million users, and how you should, carefully tread the path with technology. First thing, I went to some self-help books and looked at what it takes to create a startup. So you got all sorts of things that make sense, right? Know your purpose, do something you love, move fast and break things, be hungry, be foolish, all these things. Okay, so my little 2 cents is you really need to have a solid cloud strategy. And I don't just say that because I work in a cloud company. I say that because I created my first startup when I had no cloud, and it was royal pain. It was so difficult to scale. It was so risky. And now today the cloud removes so much of this suffering. And I'm going to talk about it. What is cloud? First question, and this is our own definition at AWS, is the on-demand delivery of computing resources with a pay-as-you-go model. That means it's a lot like electricity. When you when you want to turn on the lights, you don't think. You just flip a switch, you have light, you use electricity, you switch it off, that's it. You don't pay. The electricity is off. That's basically anything there is to it. So with something like cloud, it's the same idea. You plug your router, you go to the console, you get a machine. When you're done with the machine, you switch it off. Of course, there's a lot more to it, but that's the general idea. This is the on-demand and pay-as-you-go. Behind that, AWS provides a huge amount of resources and a huge amount of power that you can use as you see fit. And why would you do this? Is because, hey, then you don't have to go to the shop to buy equipment. If you need a few more machines, it can give you the machines or more power just automatically. You only pay for what you use. As I just said, when you're done, you switch it off, you stop paying. And it's always there. It's almost always there. It's highly available. And it's really, really secure, which is things that are very important for you. So with this in mind, I'm going to go over like the growth of your hypothetical startup, and I'm going to show you some of the key inflection points that happened during this growth. And I'm going to take a model which is very, very common. It's not me. I didn't invent it. You see this hockey stick on the screen. This is classic. This is what we think about when we think about startups. You create the technology, you find product market fit, and at some point it really, really explodes. Users, start pouring in, and you have to handle all sorts of difficulties. But before this, you have a number of users. So these numbers are arbitrary. I mean, it doesn't mean that 10K, 500K, 10 million is an actual number. It's just for the sake of the argument. But you see, that's the idea. I'm going to go over every step. What's very important is, you're just new, you're maturing, you start having an audience, and all of a sudden, you're part of the landscape. So demands are very different at every stage. So, and in the tradition of the startup drawing business plan on a paper napkin, I kind of drew this by hand, so I hope you like it. I kind of like my little drawings. All right. You're a founder, you're a CTO, you're a CEO. The number one CEOs and CTOs are the number one thing you have to produce is decisions, really. And so you're already facing with all these decisions. Does it run on cloud? Is it fast enough? How long do I need to build it? Which services do I use? So on the right side, this is the list of services provided by a cloud provider. So there's 200 of them. How do I make a decision? Is that the latest? All of this. And this is what I'm exactly going to try to go through. There is a lot of fluff. There is a lot of things you don't really need to pay too much attention to just to get started. And it's very hard to get through this. So this is why you need guiding principles. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about. You need some sort of a North Star to explain, how to guide your journey. All right, so how do we go about this then? Amazon has a framework that's called the well-architected framework, which decomposes, every system in areas where you should excel. Operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. So I'm not going to go in very deep details. Actually, if you Google for well-architected, you will be able to find all sorts of details. But basically, what that means is you need to optimize for these 5 aspects along the life of your company. But my point, which is not probably highlighted well enough, is that these pillars have a different level of focus depending on how you grow. And one I think that is very important and should really be your number one North Star is like the smell test, right? It's simplicity. And I took this definition from the Agile Manifesto because it's my favorite definition of simplicity. It is the art of maximizing the amount of work you don't do. Or to put in a much easier way to understand, the art of minimizing what you do to just get the same result. And I'll give you a couple of examples during the presentation, but I've seen too many companies picking up tools or technologies that they don't fully understand or are way too demanding for the goal they want to achieve. And growing a startup is all about setting the goals that you are going to achieve without optimizing, prematurely and too early, and trying to buy it more than you can chew, and then that actually is going to hurt you more than it's going to help you, right? Uh, a little question that I ask very often is, what do you think is the best? Is that a cloud? Is that, sorry, what's the best? Is a plane better or a bicycle a better tool? Plane or bike, right? And the answer is, well, it depends, right? They both have a purpose. The plane is like going to take you very, very far. But if it turns out that what you need to do is go down the street to buy groceries, maybe a bicycle is better for this case. And a plane is better, it's more powerful, but it's much harder to learn, where a bicycle is something that's super easy to drive. And so it's not so clear and black and white and simple all the time. And very often people tend to not really realize that what matters is what you want to achieve. So you're there and you're starting from 0 users to, let's say, roughly 10K users. You're building. So what technology should you use, right? This is why you attended this talk. And we are all geeks. We love charts. We love decision trees. So I made one that is really, really, oops, sorry. It's really the one you need, the only one you need to know. It's very simple. If you pick any technology, if you're familiar with it, yeah, you can probably use it. If you're not familiar with it, just avoid it. Simple. And that really will cut through the fluff. It really is. The essence of this thinking is to say a tool is here to augment your power, right? If it doesn't augment your power because you spend more energy learning the tool than using the tool, then it's not for you just yet. At some point, it might be worth learning this tool, but right now you are 0 users, right? You're just building something very quickly. You want to make sure it works. Don't go with stuff you don't understand. And in my opinion, what you really should focus is operational excellence, security, and cost. I'm going to go a little bit in details and give you actually what that means later. But one of the other things you should avoid is exactly that, is the peer pressure anti-pattern of listening to everybody. We are passionate about technology. We love to have very strong opinions. So you will read things like, this language is dead, this framework is bad, it doesn't perform, this database is useless. And you also will have people who are going to do what I'll call CV-oriented development. You would pick a technology because it's trendy. Or you have somebody you say, oh yeah, I switched to this technology and all my problems disappeared. So you're going to say, oh, I need to use this technology. So it's the debate between the plane and the bicycle. Go back to simplicity. Is it easy to use? Can you get to the result as fast as possible? That's all you should think about. Don't listen. Today, any common technology, whether it's a database, a programming language, will take you to at least your first 10,000 users, maybe more. So right now, you're just building for 10K users. Don't worry. Like the big one, for example, monolith. Everybody talks about monolith as being bad. I'm sorry, but monoliths are okay, and many companies scale to a really large size and audience without using fancy stuff like microservices and splitting. So if you read somewhere monoliths are bad, I think this is not really, this is not something that matters. And in reality, this goes back to the anti-pattern of listening what is trendy. All right, so really, I'm highlighting all these examples to make you understand that all these words should be always filtered through, does it get me where I want to be very fast? All right, so pillars. We had these pillars about security, operations, reliability. Here's my take on when you release your first system, this is what it should be. So I'm going to be a bit technical here. I apologize for the people who don't really know technology in the audience, if there are any. But operational excellence to me is just one thing. You should have a one-click deploy and a one-click rollback for your first product. Why? Because too many times on Friday afternoon, you're going to say, oh, it's just one last little change. And I deploy it and I go home to my kids or my girlfriend or my spouse or my boyfriend or whoever. And then I'm going to watch a movie. and then you deploy and everything breaks and you spend the whole weekend trying to fix the nightmare. So you need to roll back and deploy in one click. This is super important. Get automation in your DNA super early. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to build it fast enough. Reliability. You don't want people in this world of one-star review killing entire systems. You don't want your reliability to be bad. So you need to also test as much as you can and automate this process. You're just one or two engineers. You need to let the machine work for you. Security. Make sure development and production are not the same system, not accidentally release a database, a test database in production, a few things like this. And cost, this pillar, well, use the cloud. The cloud is actually something that allows you to control costs extremely well. And another thing, another concept, I know I'm throwing a lot of concepts at you right now, is managed services. Managed services is something where instead of you building an entire stack to use a product, you let the cloud provider do it. The most common example is databases. So let's say you want a database. You can buy the machine. You can set up the machine. You can patch the machine. You can install the database. Then you have to set up backups and you have to make sure everything works. What you really want that creates the value is use the database. But you have all these blue and green boxes are your problem. Or you can ask a cloud provider like AWS to just give you a database. You get a database, you get an IP address, we take care of the backup, we take care of a lot of things. It's always on, we take care of replications, we take care of a lot of details. And your problem is just to create value. And you make it our problem or the cloud provider problem to just, take care of the low level details that don't really bring you any money, any value, what we call the undifferentiated heavy lifting, to use our colloquial, our jargon. So always think about this. And of course, this managed services cost a little more than just the service, but you have to think of it this way. You are spending some money to save time. When you are a startup, you don't have much money, you don't have much time, but time is even more precious than money. So spend some of your money to save time. Don't spend your time trying to save money. I'll give you one example of a company I worked with. I actually was there. I was a consultant. I was not hired by the company. It was a company called MyCube. It died a long time ago. They raised $8 million. They had 0 users. For more than a year, they built a database because they said we are a social network and we're going to need to take 200 million users from day one. So they built just a database, not even a product, just a database to hold that. Because in 2008, you only had a very few, a small handful number of databases. Then Facebook was getting big at the time, open sourced their own database called Cassandra, which actually solved the problem MyCube was trying to solve. So they spent another year and a half rebuilding on top of Cassandra and trying to improve Cassandra. And 2 years and a half later, they were out of money and they shut down. They never launched, ever. So they spent more than $8 million building a technology instead of launching their business. That was really a sad thing to see. And I was hired as a consultant at the time, and I could see it happening. And I got out. My contract terminated before they were out of cash, but I was very happy I left. So never, please do this. Remember this company. You can Google them if you want. They are all the news, all the history is on the web. So now you're at 10K, 500K users. At this point, the database is going to break. Issues are going to appear. Number one, the first thing to do is do not panic. This is normal. It's time to rebuild. And in fact, I like to introduce my favorite rule of 50%, which is every time you target a certain number of users on the gray white columns, this is the number of users you have built, you are planning to get. When you reach the blue level, which is roughly half, you need to rebuild for the next level. So if you think you have built for 100K users, when you have 50K users, you should build for the 500K users, and you have to rebuild. And I think for me, it's very important. You should accept the fact that you will learn how your users use the product. You will learn many things about the behavior, your technical issues. Technology will evolve. AWS releases product every week and major products every 6 months, roughly. So by the time you need a tool, maybe we will have released something that helps you. So don't try to anticipate too much. On the other hand, what you can do, and which is a good architectural trick, is to build so it's easy to change. Right? So this is where your effort should be. Make something that is easy to change, not make something that is complex to build. Pillars, well, again, now at this point, you've grown, so you should have backups and recovery. Please test your backups. Make sure you know how to recover. Too many times, I got calls at 2 a.m. from a client saying my database is dead, and you're asking them, okay, so you have a backup? And they say, yeah, but it doesn't work. Can you help? So please don't do that. Don't be these people. You need to have, beyond observability, you need to have put systems that will actually beep you, alert you, send you an SMS, whatever, if something goes wrong. Observability at the beginning is just the ability for you to debug. But when you have systems that size, they need to be able to tell you themselves something is wrong. You need to use, I would not talk too much about this, infra as code. Threat model, this is security. At this point, it's very important to build security. Every week you read in the news that such and such company got hacked, data is leaked, right? So this is really super critical. The threat model is you sitting down and saying, okay, given the type of service I have, here are the type of attacks I'm likely to be under. So for example, if you have a web application, there is no point defending yourself against potential IoT threats, right? If you have a finance company or a payment company, it might be more interesting to check whatever compliance needs you have, or what happens if somebody puts a ransomware or tries to steal your money, right? There's a lot of different ways to protect yourself. And cybersecurity is such a vast subject, you need to limit the focus. And the first thing to do is this threat model. Sit down and say, okay, what do I have? Cloud providers, for almost every threat, have already a set of tools that are active either by default, either for a very cheap fee. Like, for example, AWS will provide you defense against DDoS as part of the service. We will provide you web application firewalls. We will provide you system that make sure that nobody is exfiltrating data out of your system without telling you. We'll provide you secret key management services so people can't hack your credentials. All of these for a very low cost, or sometimes part of the basic costs. And then also protect your keys, access keys, API keys. This is something that happened to me as well. Company was really leader on their market. And then they had a key, an access key to Amazon in the root binary. The hacker got the key because you can decompile code. And they found the key. They found it was a key to log in. They logged in. And then it was a root key. And they started to have deleting systems. Lucky for this company, they had backups. There were safety in places. They were able to reopen. And in fact, 2 weeks later, they announced that they had Series A. But it was a near-death experience. Why? Because the developer didn't even bother creating another key, which in Amazon, you can do by just 2 clicks. Right? You can go to the dashboard, create 2 clicks, that's it. And you have a key that doesn't allow you to do privileged operations. So just this laziness almost killed the company. So be wary of this. Now you're reaching about, you're growing. It's very serious at this point. 110 million users, 500K to 10 million users. You're reaching, large scale. So at this point, unfortunately, all pillars are important. Whether it's, all way beyond one click deploy, you need to have all sorts of factors in place. Security might be very sophisticated. Reliability is a huge subject because at this point you probably have data lakes and machine learning and APIs and mobile services and a very, very strong set of services. You might have microservices at this point because it starts making sense. And so all of this has to work together and needs a lot more testing. It's a lot more difficult to get them to never break. Performance efficiency. Same. If people click on the button and they wait for 5 seconds for anything to happen, you're not going to stay at 100 million users very long. And as well for cost optimization at this point becomes something that is very critical because cloud is potentially very cheap, but also it's a very different proposition to control cost and manage the logic of cost when you use the cloud. So in fact, I would just want to give you a small illustration. On the left, this is the cost. Let's say you have a company who has a data center. Right, on the left, you see the cost is at the top, right, here. And this is the fixed cost. You have a data center. You don't pay more or less, right? You just bought the machines, that's it. And then the curve is the number of users. So let's say you are a hotel reservation company, and this point here is early 2020, then you can see your hotel reservation go down. You got much less users. We're just still paying for the data center. So all this part above the curve is sunken cost. You pay for it regardless, right? So when you are in cloud, you can actually scale down and make the cost match the user. So you have less users, you have less cost. You have more users, you have more cost. This is a lot more manageable, right? But the next question is, so how do you improve this? What is the measurement of better cost control? And the measurement of that is that when you start switching to say cost per user, not cost. So then the way you will improve your system is by managing the cost per user. And this is a completely different way of thinking about the computing than you had before. Before it was simple. You buy a machine, it has a cost. And now, how do you make these machines, cost less or your computing cost less? And it always goes back to improving your efficiency or making sure somebody's job is to reduce this cost and reorganizing your whole company about this capital expense versus operational expense and optimization. So this is a completely different lifestyle as a company, and this is something you will have to learn. We have a tool. So at this point, the pillars are not enough. You can go through the tool, and the tool will help you assess that. It's a very sophisticated tool. There's about 50 questions. Each question has about 8 to 10 sub-questions. So there's 500 questions to estimate, how well you're doing and give you advice and make sure you have, give you an improvement plan and allow you to come back and iterate. And then you have all these new concepts you will need to learn, service-oriented architecture, you need to use managed services, you will probably have issues with multiple availability zones, you are multi-region, so you have users on every continent. Your databases need to be federated. It's not enough to just have one MySQL server. And I'm highlighting this here because I've seen too many startups try to do this from day one. And every bullet point here is hard. It's really hard. It's very costly to put in place in time, in knowledge, in cognitive load. So you only need this when you reach this kind of size, right? I can't stress this enough. And in fact, I think the best way to think of it is remember that you are building a business. You are not building a technology. So what you really want is, does that solve a problem? And do my user like it? If you build something that is so hard to change that after 6 months and realizing that your users want something slightly different, then it's a complete, you have to restart completely from scratch to build something new, then you have already lost. So you need to always make sure you're building your business. Technology is just a way to get there, and you need to do just enough. How do we help? I'm glad you asked. So I'll just highlight this. I'll put it back later. AWS provide promotional credits. So you can look at this QR code, go to the link. For startups at KMC Solutions, we give up to $1,000 in credits of usage for the platform. So you can use almost every service. And $1,000 is enough to run a couple of servers, a lot of storage, and enough bandwidth for many startups survive with this for more than a year, sometimes two. So it's actually quite a lot if you manage your spending wisely. I'll put this back while we talk, but take it away now. Go and create startups, and then come back and wow us with them. Right? We'll be so happy to learn about them. And that's it for me. So thanks for attending. I think we're going to switch to. I'm happy to answer any question.
Oh, thank you very much, Jerome. Well, to shoot the first question, we have the one of the like hackathon winners before we had like grand champion level the hackathons we promoted and organized. He's also the managing partner, and let's say he splashed out the word CEO for his company. This is a startup he started when he was still in school. So let's welcome Rafael. Happy, we call him Happy Alampang. Rafael, would you like to pull up your video and
Hi, Rafael.
first question?
Hi, Jerome.
Hi.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I myself actually am also a solutions architect in AWS. Also an
And
AAI as well.
Then you know all my secrets.
Yes, yes. But I do have I guess a starter question, because I do understand you did point out a good point earlier, wherein most of the audience here might not be inclined, let's say, in the technology. But a common question, especially in the Philippines, arises, and also based off of my consultancy work, and that is to put a number to how much would it actually cost for a startup company to utilize something like AWS as part of their sort of core business. And just to probably put it into context, most people here in the Philippines come up with like an idea, and they're looking for infrastructure, right? I have an idea, this is a web app, this is so and so. But at the most basic sense, especially for us solutions architect, what you actually really need is number one, a website. Number two, a server to host your web application. And number three, a database, because you need data to persist eventually. However, some companies heard of this concept called the cloud, and what we usually preach is something like it's utilitarian, you only pay for what you use, but they actually end up paying more than what their expected sort of cost is. What their expected cost is. So I guess the question here is, especially for those in the audience who would like to start their own business, wherein the cloud is a core component of it, what would you say would be a good ballpark figure, and what are the probably other services that they might get started with in AWS particularly, in order to put up a web-based sort of startup, or a startup wherein cloud technology is at its core? Just like a number, just to get some idea, because some people think like, okay, maybe $2,000 a month, maybe $3,000 a month, or something like that. Yeah.
So actually, yeah, thanks. It's a good question, because but it's, I hope nobody's recording my number or is not going to come and ask me, hold me to it. So the cheapest, the absolute cheapest. There are two questions in your question. So one of it is just number. All right. So the absolute cheapest server you can get from AWS, I think, is $3.50 a month. It's a really low-end machine, but with this, it's a VPS, right? So with this, you can install anything you want, and you can run a web app. It actually also come for very little more. You can have a website. You can have storage. So, and then for about $10 more, you have a fully managed database. So it's really something of this order. If you really don't want to have multiple services, I've seen companies have a single server and install their PHP, Laravel, Apache, and MySQL all running on one machine. I'm perfectly okay with this. And then you're around $5 to $10 a month, maybe 15. 3 cappuccinos in Singapore. That's a 3 cappuccino company. And with this, you can serve already a substantial number of users. You might have a surprise with the bandwidth, but that's it. So really, for under $50 a month, and probably even under $20 a month, you can run some very substantial computing. The other part is, okay, so fine, why don't I just buy a machine, right? And do it from my living room. So the question is that at this point, the question is more about cost of ownership than pure money. It's fine, buy your machine. Okay, but then, your hard disk is going to die. So did you plan for this? Imagine your users are expecting you to be serving 24/7. You have a power cut in your house, or your hard disk breaks, or suddenly you're upgrading your machine because, I don't know, you need to patch it. You have all these unpredictable events that are going to make you have a much lower quality of service. But also, yeah, when you have a machine, if you suddenly need to buy a new hard disk, this is a cost to your machine. When you are paying for a machine on AWS or on the cloud, you always get a brand new machine. You don't have these questions, right? So you might pay ultimately a little more. It's like getting a rental car or a fleet of rental cars. You might just pay a little more, and over time, you will have bought your machine several times over, but there's a whole set of problems you never have to worry about. And this is what I call spending some money to save a lot of time, right? The cost of ownership is much more interesting than just the fact that you buy a single machine. All the headaches you don't have are worth the price difference.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a bit of like
Thank you.
a mouthload too. Thank you, Happy, for joining. Stay there in case you have some more questions, and your team or staff can possibly throw your questions through you. After Happy, we have the lone founder of Impact Hub Manila. She's also the lead for Asia Pacific. We have here Ces Rondario. Ces.
Hi, hi, DJ. Thank you so much. Hi, Jerome.
Hi,
Thank you so
Seth.
much for the invaluable presentation. I'm sure all of the people who are watching and who are viewing and streaming the webinar picked up so much on. So thank you so much. For Impact Hub, we're very proud partners of KMC, and at the core of Impact Hub is we support entrepreneurs start and scale in whatever needs they would have, right? And in our business of finding entrepreneurs, mostly from idea. So that's why we do a lot of hackathons, because I think ideation is super, super important, especially in emerging markets like the Philippines. Uh, Part of our incubation programs is giving out options for cloud. And earlier you were mentioning, all the stuff that AWS provides. But my question, and this is hopefully going to also address queries from our audience, how is AWS different from all the other? Obviously, there's tons of other options that they could, um, you know, um,
That's a very,
connect to.
very difficult
But
question, I'm
maybe
sure.
if you, maybe
I
if you
think,
could unpack it a little bit more, the
okay, so
difference. Go ahead.
sure. So there are a few things. While AWS has extremely deep cloud knowledge, we don't just boast about the number of services we have. We publish new services all the time. We have more than 200. But I think the most important part of that is that 90%, I think, or 80, more than 90% of our services come from needs expressed by our clients. So one of the things AWS is incredibly good at is listening to what customers want and then bringing the solution to them. And the other 10% usually of products that come from the fact that we have so much experience dealing with so many companies that we can also anticipate needs, even though they are not really expressed by people, because we can see trends. So the incredible customer focus that we have, the fact that we release products who are only dedicated to serving clients, are extremely important traits. The other part, which is something that is a focus at Amazon, is we are very conscious that cost is a key component, right? Many companies, big and small, come to us because of the cost, and then they stay because they discover the fantastic product offering and they discover the flexibility. So cost is a key. And we have, let me just actually, I've got a couple of slides. We have an entire partner ecosystem, which is dedicated to help you using the product. But we are also some people who don't, just show up at the end of the quarter and say, hey, sign a deal. We are actively helping you managing costs, improving costs. Like actually at AWS, there is an entire function where there is an entire rule that when you go see a customer, we should always try to find them a way to save money. So this is this incredible customer focus, I think, which is pretty, which makes AWS pretty amazing to work with.
Let me hold on that question, Jerome. I think this is what the company of Rafael is doing. Am I correct? You subscribe to Amazon service, you make sure you optimize using through your services because you are a dev house, a solutions house. Am I correct, Rafael? Yes?
Yes. So we
Yes.
utilize a lot of AWS services, lower cost, especially for our infrastructure. We did a lot of transitioning over the past few years, from on-premise servers all the way to full-on cloud stuff, and it did save a lot of money, like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to, am I
Go ahead,
allowed
Cess.
to
Yes.
I wanted to just kind of lift off. You mentioned something earlier, Jerome. You said, which I think is super invaluable for everybody to have heard it. I hope everybody caught that. You said that you're building a business. You're not building a technology
Yeah.
company. Was it that? Was I right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one thing that I want to hear from you, and maybe this is going to help, for this helps people. You know how, because we meet a lot of startups and they always off the bat will want to build their own, right? So is there a quick way for entrepreneurs who are starting out? Like when do they, what are the things that you think they need to kind of, because some are going to be stubborn, they're going to insist on building their own, right? So what are the, I guess, top of your head, what should they think about when they're deciding whether to build their own, and versus taking on AWS, for example, because they're going to be stubborn, they're very stubborn, just let me
Jerome,
tell you.
I'll just link to that. I'll just link to Cess's question on some of the several, like 5 questions from the audience, but the same thought is like, what's the difference between just hopping onto Shopify or building your own?
Yeah.
So allow me to answer it first, then kindly defend me as a startup entrepreneur cheerleader. Um, I tell them, if you just want to sell your product and walk away, that's it. But if you have the vision to solve a problem, run a company, and exit from it, then you start a business of your own. Am I correct, Jerome, or is this something more
Yes.
that you can possibly do?
If you, like, Shopify is a good example, right? Shopify will help you build online e-commerce shops, right? So if your business is to sell things on a custom store, then yeah, just build it. But your business is to sell, right? So the good point of differentiation is exactly as your startup say. I don't really need AWS. I have it. So if it already exists, then don't build it. If you can make it and bend it to your will and your needs, and it satisfies your need, you don't really need to build a tool. And this is also valid when you are using AWS. So when you are using something like AWS is different from something like Shopify, right? AWS will bring you the tools you need to build something like Shopify. So whether you are what we call a digital native, which means like a company whose business would not exist without the internet, or you are a company where the internet is something that is useful to you, but not key. Like, for example, you are an airline. If you're an airline, of course, you need the web. I mean, you use the web to sell tickets and do all sorts of things, but your core business is to fly people across the world, right? But if you are somebody like an e-commerce store, of course, you need technology. So you should only really build a technology if there is no viable alternative in the market that you can already use for yourself. That's basically it, and it goes for every tool, whether you're talking at the lowest level, a simple database or a simple product, or whether they're talking at a much higher level, like an entire online store. But what I encourage people to do is to go through the incredible catalog of cloud providers, because if you go back to the list of services I showed you, there was this constellation of red, blue boxes. Most of them are extremely advanced services. We are going to do a preference engine, contact center, machine learning tools, complete high performance computing systems, complete system that will normally take you years to build, and you can just build it and build on top of it. The same way as today you don't decide to write your own database, right? You pick a database. We have many services that you can just pick and build on. But if
With
you
that,
just
Jerome,
want, if you
yes.
just want to sell a few things and build a customized e-commerce, yeah, just use Shopify or Magento and run it on AWS.
Yes, with that, Jerome, I really wanted you to add in a way that we spoke yesterday. I'm just managing time. I just want to take to consideration the questions that I think that would just, I don't want to leave them alone, but they are relevant questions from traditional businesses. Jerome, a question from Abby. She is running a hospitality management company, and her question is, we are on the, we are doing online marketing efforts. For 2 years now and hasn't really changed except for different social media channels. How can we achieve a significant market growth using Amazon services?
Okay, there are two answers. One is purely technical. There are a host of systems at AWS that you can use to perfect and measure the impact of your marketing campaigns. So maybe, I don't know what marketing campaigns you do, but a big part of having a good marketing campaign is to accurately measure the results and measure the impact and fine tune. So we have a lot of tools for this. The other part of whether your marketing strategy is well designed in the sense that the messaging is correct or the product is attractive, we don't have technical tools with it, but we do have, you might be able to talk to us. We do have some abilities to help with go-to-market strategies, what we call go-to-market strategies. And you might have access to that if you guys go through our startup program that has a
As a tool.
Slide here. But if we're not going to be, as far as I know, we don't have a advertising agency that will design ads for you, right? We will provide a lot of ways for you to measure the impact of these ads, but we don't design them for you.
All right. This is a question from Manos. He's a network IT manager of a BPO company. What's your recommended approach for having two, cloud and offsite disaster recovery center, or just cloud? What's your take on that?
It entirely depends on the recovery times, the recovery points, and essentially also you might have regulatory needs where you might need to leave some data in a given country. So the way we organize, the way typically you would have disaster recovery is that you have everything on cloud. Even inside a specific geographical area, we have way to duplicate the data amongst multiple data centers while remaining in a given place. But you might have a DR site in another country, and that also sometimes might be in contradiction with regulation. So I don't really have a clear answer. My natural answer was to say just you do everything on cloud, but there are times where it makes sense, particularly for regulation, to also have a little bit of a backup on-prem.
One of the most like fundamental questions that very common is like, why would I subscribe to cloud services when I could just store data in my computer?
Well,
I mean, I could have tons of like hard drive capacity. Why should I do cloud?
Well, because the next time your hard disk dies, you're going to lose your data, right? So, for example, exactly. And you're going to have to buy a new one, and all of a sudden, your cheap computer will be a lot more expensive.
Okay, that's right. Here's a question about cybersecurity, Jerome, from Junel Hisanan. Mr. Jerome, if I were to be a cybersecurity consultant in a startup company, what specific skills do I need to learn in order to counter cyber attacks?
Wow, this is a vast discipline. So first, before I answer that, I just wanted to continue the previous question. Like I said, the cheapest computer on AWS is $3.50 a month. So you can buy a lot of computers with that. The cheapest one I found in Singapore is $400. So it's 100, it's like 60 of them, right? But to go back to cybersecurity, it's a very vast discipline. It's a super large discipline. So you have to learn the basics and then pick a specialty. What is interesting is that the advent of cloud made a lot of attacks, a lot of way to attack the system. Not more ways to attack the system, but it basically has made that many people get accidentally exposed to it. So there's a super large need. But fundamentally, cloud is not different from on-prem. Most of the foundations are the same. So I would say, you learn cybersecurity and then you can learn how it applies to cloud. That is probably the best way. But everything about securing all the security frameworks in existence are valid on cloud. So there's not a single good way to get on cloud. The first one is get good at security.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. I think that's a lot of things to do. We are all defenders of human rights by being a responsible hacker, in a way. So, Jerome, I really want to end in a note where it connects the title, "How do you handle success?" Initially, it doesn't seem connecting, but if you think deeper, when you get to a point running your business or running you're a corporate executive and you're running someone else's business, and you need to push this further in terms of size and cybersecurity requirement, for example. Here, this is where we are at now, Jerome. I said earlier you made 2 successful exits, but I really want to learn how you manage your one particular failure. That's how we want to end.
Okay, so I think I talked a lot about technology, right? But actually the success of your company is not really just technology. At best, it's 50%, right? I very often talk to people in the startup community and I tell them, you need business acumen and you need technology acumen, and it's like chopsticks, right? You need both, otherwise you're not going to go anywhere. When I became a CTO, I was an extremely good programmer. I just became the CTO because I started the company. At the time, it meant nothing. And I discovered all of a sudden that there was a whole world of things I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to talk to my CEO because he didn't speak the same language as me. I didn't know how to manage investors. I didn't understand really much about how you sell. I used to think, hey, I have the best product, right? It's going to be selling by itself. I didn't understand that a lot of this part also has to be built with intent. We also were very poor at building a company culture. So it was all sorts of things that are beyond just technical success. And if you don't ensure this part, your company will fail. You might have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, nobody knows how to sell it, nobody appreciates it, is never going to make it. And to talk about the failure, I think it's an interesting thing because it goes back to what Seth was asking. The reason why we failed this company really was because I just wanted a startup. And I just picked a subject that crossed my mind one day and I didn't do any market research. I thought, hey, it's just a good idea. I'm just going to build a little prototype and run with it. And that's what I did. And I got a few people who believed me because I already had 2 startups. And they said, yeah, if Jerome says so, it's probably good. And in fact, it turns out it was a terrible idea. It turns out actually Google killed it by releasing a free product a few months later that was exactly doing the same. I didn't think, do I solve a problem? Is it a good way to solve it? Do users like it? I didn't run a little bit of informal research around myself. And then when the company failed and I had to decide what I was doing with the money that had been invested, I found that there was a lot of legal issues, even just returning money. I thought, hey, it's okay, I'm just going to return you the money, right? No harm done. Okay, I just spent a little bit, but you can have the rest. And I discovered, no, it was not that simple. We had signed papers, we had signed legal agreements. It was a very difficult part where I also grew a lot. So I think you become this guy who runs a company, you become this guy who suddenly has to run 10, 50, 100, 200 people. It's a completely different ball game. You have to work on yourself and face what you know and what you don't know with a lot of lucidity and get help in all these areas. Not expect that you're going to make it, just expect this is a new profession that you have to learn and technology takes a back seat. And this actually will make you grow incredibly to become a much better all-rounded person.
Yes, Jerome, I think everything you said here is a very, very good segue to invite everyone. We have this program that answers everything every word of the cause of your failure in this program. So this is a very intensive 24-week program we designed with Impact Hub. It's instead of professors, you get to be mentored by successful entrepreneur. Whereas we provide you the most challenging problems when you start a business, which is what? Mentoring, partnership, and working space. So where else in the world you could have that program, please join our SFI program. If you are an entrepreneur and you have a new idea, join in. If you are an existing entrepreneur and you're struggling with your office space, join in. If you think you have a solution to a social problem, join in. So we're here to find all those impact-driven entrepreneurs with most innovative ideas, and we put this all in a program called Space for Ingenious. And thank you very much, Amazon Web Services, for being a partner for this one. Thank you very much. The reason why I asked you, Jerome, for the reasons for your failure is not to segue the program for SFI, but really we want to learn the wisdom that you had all this time. So Jerome will be one of those mentors and coaches we have for the program. I'm sure of that. Do I get a thumbs up, Jerome? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
you will be. So it's not just going to be the second time you'll be speaking to the Philippine startup ecosystem. It's going to be like many times, and it's
looking
now. I
forward
want
to
to
it.
respect all your time. Thank you very much, Ces Fundario, CEO and founder of Impact Hub Manila.
Thank you, Jerome.
Rafael
Thank
I
Alampay.
you.
just
Thank
I
you
just
very
have
much.
one little thing. First of all,
Yep.
thanks so much. It was a blast. I hope I didn't bore you too much. And the last thing I have to ask is for the audience, you will get, or maybe you already got a link to a survey. So please fill it. It's something that's very useful to us to know if the message is good, what we need to improve, how we need to improve. But thanks a lot. It was fun.
Thank you,
Hope
Jerome.
to
We'll
do more
hear
in the
from you
future.
soon. Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Thank you.
together with KMC Solutions, the country's largest provider for flexible offices and HR staffing. We have it all here from 27, yeah, Patricia, we have 27, right? 27 existing workspaces for now. And together with Impact Hub Manila, the largest global network of social entrepreneurs. Thank you very much, AWS. Thank you very much, Jerome. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.